You need to drive. This is not some sort of biological vital function, no matter what your 16-year-old tries to tell you. But modern American society is built around the privilege of efficient transportation, which is why what we use to power our cars is such an important question. Electric vehicles were first seriously considered in 1970 when we started to become a little more aware of what was actually coming out of our tailpipes. This led to the Clean Air Act of 1970, which is why new cars come standard equipped with catalytic converters to filter out roughly 98% of harmful pollutants. Fast forward to today, and the government now deems the progression of electric cars sufficient to have them to replace internal combustion vehicles. So, in 2022, Jay Inslee signed into law a bill that stated by 2030 in the state of Washington, it would be illegal to purchase a new internal combustion vehicle. This Electric Car Act of 2030 should be repealed for three main reasons. Gasoline power is the most convenient, storable, and recyclable energy available to us. Switching to electric vehicles would cause an increased reliance on an insufficient power grid, and electric vehicles are only environmentally clean for the immediate consumer. Firstly, gasoline power is the most recyclable, convenient, and storable energy that we possess. I mean, any man with a thumb wrench and WD-40 can repurpose a junkyard motor. This kind of DIY rejuvenation is unheard of for lithium-ion battery packs. And by the way, you need these lithium-ion battery packs to store electricity. To store gasoline, you need your average soup can. Environmental concerns aside for the moment, gasoline is the best source of energy that we possess as machine harnessing creatures. Secondly, switching to electric vehicles would cause an increased reliance on an insufficient power grid. The domestic electricity demand is expected to increase 18% by 2030 and 38% by 2035. And instead of beefing up our power grid in Washington state, we are destroying dams along the Snake River. And to put that in perspective, 70% of our power in Washington state is hydroelectric. The government should provide the infrastructure before imposing the law, not the other way around. And definitely don't destroy the infrastructure while imposing the law. Thirdly, electric cars are only environmentally clean for the immediate consumer. Out of the total greenhouse gas emissions produced by the United States in 2023, about 16% came from cars and light trucks. About 25% came from burning fossil fuels to support our power grid. This means that by purchasing an electric car, you would merely be contributing to the 25% of pollution somewhere else, rather than the 16% coming out of your tailpipe. This shifting of the blame will solve no issues. It's comparable to solving a neighborhood mole infestation by catching all the moles in your own yard, finding your least favorite neighbor, and chucking them into his yard. This might solve personal issues, but no actual mole infestation is addressed. Probably the best argument in favor of the Electric Car Act of 2030 is that in the long run, electric cars will become much more affordable. I mean, they are easy to drive, they require less maintenance, and with the demand for them raised by an Electric Car Act, manufacturers would be enabled to lower their prices. As it stands, it's a niche market, but that would change. In order to unpack why this is false, we must bypass the variability of the electric car market by looking at the price of raw materials, which are only increasing. The price of lithium has increased tenfold since 2021. The price of cobalt has doubled since 2020. And the price of nickel is up 75% since 2020. No amount of increased market will fix these supply chain issues. At best, the price of electric cars will be comparable to that of their internal combustion counterparts. Another common misconception is that electric vehicles will aid the planet in a global warming crisis. As I've already established, the power grid is far from carbon-free. And just to put that in perspective, out of the 4,321 billion kilowatt hours of electricity produced by the United States in 2023, only about 21% of it was considered renewable or clean energy, so solar, wind, hydroelectric. 60% was produced by consuming fossil fuels, such as coal and petroleum, and 18% was nuclear power, which, by the way, we are phasing out. Now, even if these numbers did look reasonable, it is the non-renewable fuels that will be the ones ramped up with an increased demand for electricity. You can't sprout new windmills, but you can throw more things on the fire. Putting the pollution from one place to another will solve no issues, just like throwing the moles at your neighbor is only personal. The conveniency and reliability of internal combustion engines must not be sacrificed for a false hope of saving the planet. Electricity does not come out of thin air. So what can the average Washingtonian do about what laws are passed? The first step is care. The government is supposed to be by the people and for the people. And anytime you are forced to make a decision, you should be asking yourselves, what representatives claim to have my support? Be closely attuned to the voting process and vote accordingly. The Electric Car Act of 2030 should be repealed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cochran. I think, just a definitional question that
Sure.
I can track with you on. You were talking about the 25% of the energy and the 16% coming out the tailpipes. Could you just break that down for me again to help me understand the confirmation number 2?
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks.
So, I'm envisioning a pie chart in my mind, right? Total greenhouse gas emissions produced by the United States in 2023, 16% cars and light trucks, 25% burning fossil fuels to support our power grid. Does that answer your question? So it's 16% slice and 25% slice.
Got it. And 16% goes where?
It's from our tailpipes.
Okay, and then 25%?
That's burning fossil fuels to support our power grid.
Got it, thanks.
Yep.
So can the power grid become sufficient to go with all electric vehicles and still win?
That's a great question. In my opinion, that would have to happen when we switch to nuclear energy. It's just opinion. I haven't researched down that track because the same people that are against internal combustion engines are also adamantly against switching to nuclear. But it's not that can it happen, it's not happening. The infrastructure is not being created before the law is imposed. But nuclear is the only way I could see it feasible. For sure.
Luke, is there a particular reason that you chose this topic?
I like cars. I like the smell of gas. It shocked me how close we are to it. We're actually 2030, and we're supposed to be mimicking California, but they actually have 2035. We're the earliest state in the nation because we're seen as a good testing ground because of all our hydroelectric power, which we're destroying.
Did you look into charging stations?
Yeah, so my extent of looking into charging stations was we would have to extremely beef up the power grid to facilitate for that transportation of the electricity. Because you can't have a giant, like at a gas station, you have a giant tub of gasoline underneath the gas station. You can't have a giant battery under a charging station. So to transport it, it requires a ton of money, a ton of construction. And to elaborate upon that, in California, I think they would need about $8 billion just in the large cities to facilitate for switching to electric cars, and they have a budget of about $7 million, as it stands right now.
Did you look into the toxic substances that are used or not used in the manufacture and use of the two different types of vehicle?
Not as much. I mostly looked at the recyclability. Sure. Couldn't say that in the thesis either. That aspect. And I can't remember the terms off my head, but renewing a lithium-ion battery pack is a lot more chemically involved than melting down an engine block.
Do you know where we're at with electric car utilization right now? As we're thinking about the energy grid, I'm curious what percentage of the current Washington population is using electric vehicle or bringing the grid?
Thanks for asking that. I didn't get to that on my thesis. So 1.2% of people as a nation. I don't know about in Washington, are currently relying on electric power. 1.2, well, yeah, 1.2%.
Thank you.
Yep.